Peeps, what's the beef? Chef It Podcast, episode 48. Welcome, one and all. Self-esteem is holding you back, Chef. That is today's episode. Thank you all for jumping on and listening. Obviously, as always, you have myself and you have my man, POBG. What's happening, bro? You all good?
What's going on, gamers? All right?
Yeah.
We're not doing the surviving the coronavirus pandemic episode, no?
Hopefully by the time people are listening to this that it will have passed, but it definitely won't. Listen to an absolutely terrifying podcast with Joe Rogan the other day. He had some lad who was...
I finished it today as well.
Went in to cure my anxiety. Went in to fucking try and see, well, maybe this lad will just put it to bed. Came out... It's going to be 10
You know what I loved in that podcast was Joe Rogan goes, so look, I'm gonna hit the sauna 3 times a day, and he's like, no, that doesn't do anything. What? I was, yeah, no, that doesn't happen. But you 180 degree air, and he goes, if you inhaled 180 degree air, your lungs would fry. Oh, fuck.
Jeez.
What about probiotics? And he's like, no, they don't do anything. All right. And then an hour later, he goes, so what should people do? Sauna and probiotics, because that's what I'm doing. No, Joseph. It's not going to do anything for you.
I think there has to be a degree. Did that lad not just write a book? Did he not just write a book on pandemics? You know, so yeah. I don't know. Maybe because he was so fucking like, well, actually, we're fucked. You know, because he was like that. It's like, is he trying to cause more panic, or is he based? I assume he's basing it on fact. But what can you fucking do?
So you want to see in my job they have. Well, in the unit that I work in, they've split the group into 2, right? It's a very Americanized company. It's a multi-billion euro company.
Yeah. And
they've split the workforce into 2, Team A and Team B. And Team A is going to work from home next week, and Team B is going to work from home the week after that, because they are taking part in social distancing. Okay?
Right.
That's what they're doing. Google did it the week before, where they did a test run of people not being there, and then we're doing it. We're going through it from next week. They've absolutely ruined every wall in the building. They put hand sanitizers in every 10 feet throughout the whole restaurant. And then from next week, there's no food out on the display. Everything goes into plastic containers. Soup is going into yolks, and it's just like, lads, in 10 days, when this is all gone and blown over, you might be looking back on shit. We just spent thousands of euro on nothing.
Yeah, it's the panic. I suppose, like, it's really hard to know in these situations. I remember at the beginning, it's like, it's a bit fucking over the top. Which is like, you don't know what to believe or who to fucking believe. You know, even in Australia where I am, you can't, as I was saying to you before, you can't get toilet roll. You know, people are in full blown. Aussies are mad into it. They're, you know, obviously there can be rules and regulations, which is a good thing because I suppose it controls the spread. But like, you know, people are being quarantined left, right and center, and they're doing what they can. But fuck me, I don't think you can actually, if the thing is going to happen and it's going to kick off, I think it's going to kick off, you know, and I'm not too sure, you know, what a week at home is going to do to affect that other than prolonging the inevitable. But sure, look, hopefully it doesn't... It doesn't have...
When it started off and it's like, yeah, it's on China, I was like, grand, there's loads of them, they can afford it. And then they're like, it's over to Italy. I was like, Italy, that's miles away, nothing to worry about. Yeah. Somebody came from Italy to Northern Ireland. I was like, sure, look, that's Northern Ireland. That's 100 miles away. And it's like, right, it's out in it's out in Castlebar and Mayo. I'm there. What? I just left Castlebar. I'm in Westport now. It's following me.
We've got a silver-haired man on the loose in Mayo from Dublin. He is currently the infected. Let's see, a whole 28 days later.
Big time, yeah. Following me across the globe.
Yeah, guess. Hopefully it's not. Hopefully you're not infected, Peter. That's all I'll say.
Well, only time will tell.
You know.
Tell you what, though. I'll take it. I'll beat it.
You'll beat it, son. Right, let's dive in. Guys, today's episode.
Let's dive in.
Low self-esteem is holding you back. That's today's episode. And this is Today we're going to be discussing really something that not a lot of people really talk about, something that we haven't spoken about before, because this is, I suppose it's a topic that I've been going very deep on the past while. The reason that I'm talking about this, number one, I have, through doing our research within ChefIt, and we'll always try and take time to understand chefs more and more and dive deeper. So people kind of, Peter comes out with things like Cameron must live behind my couch with the shit that he says. And the reason that that happens is because literally painstaking research to understand what a chef is actually going through. You know what I mean? Obviously, I had my own experiences in the industry, but you got to clarify these things. So me and Ella, my missus, were doing research into ChefIt, and we were asking the chefs some deeper questions. And I was like, what is the number one problem? You know, what is the number one problem that you're experiencing in your life right now? And a lot of the answers when they were joining ChefIt was I was in a very negative headspace. I was depressed. I was anxious. You know, I was in a very bad place. And for me, I was trying to figure out why that was happening, because I knew a lot of people were in a dark space, but I wanted to figure out why. I was like, why did that happen? And ultimately, the answer was like, well, I have really, really low self-esteem. And it's a common pattern that I've seen pop up over and over and over again. Like a lot of the very dark episodes that the chefs have can be directly related back to having low self-esteem and no confidence in themselves. How they think about themselves and what leads to that depression is how they feel about themselves. You know, in my mind, I was like, oh, well, it's just work that's causing these things. Well, the truth was work was just kind of a trigger for it, but it wasn't the cause, if that makes sense. It was like a catalyst. And when I think about what we've been able to do in ChefIt and why things have been so effective in changing chefs' lives, it's not been an easy process. And I'll say this, I mean, Peter talked about this, that ChefIt is not easy. The process of changing your life is not easy, and changing your ways and becoming disciplined and taking responsibility for everything that's going on is not easy. But there's something that happens in that very difficult process where chefs ultimately change what they believe about themselves. And that's the most powerful thing, because your belief system, like what you actually think about yourself, that pretty much determines the outcome of your life. You think you're a piece of shit, like your life is going to be shit. If you think you are worth something, you are going to treat yourself with self-respect, you know, and you're going to do all these positive things within your life based on what you feel about yourself. So that's what we're going to be diving into today. Now, the first thing that we got to understand is what is self-esteem? Like, what is confidence in yourself? And what all of us have to know is self-esteem is your own self-worth. It's your opinion of yourself. And your opinion of yourself really is formulated in your early years. And it can be changed or it can be altered as you go through your life based on people you're around and experiences you're having. But really, it's developed in early years. And childhood can be a weird one, you know, depending on who your parents were and what they were like, and you know what they told you about yourself. You know, your parents have a fucking lot of responsibility there, because they could tell you you're great and you know you're worth something, and you know they're proud of you and they love you. And that can bolster self-esteem, or they can also tell you you're a piece of shit and you're worthless, you know. And I've met people who have gone through that and experienced that in childhood, and that also has an effect. Friends in school or being bullied in school has a massive, massive impact as well on how you think about yourself, especially in early years. And what we don't realize is that these experiences that we have as children really formulate who we are later on in life, you know, and who we determine ourselves to be. I know for me personally, I had a bit of a weird one, because within my family, I'm the youngest of 5 kids. And I can remember that in my family, and probably similar enough to Peter, that I don't come from fucking money. I don't come from like a big well-to-do family, but we're always a very proud family. You know what I mean? There was always principle to how we operated, and if you're a Higgs, this is how you fucking do things, you know, and that was always something that bolstered self-esteem. But on the other hand, I took a lot of flack in school, you know, always being the fat kid. And I won't say I was heavily bullied. I was bullied at periods, but definitely took a lot of shit in school from people, you know what I mean? And, you know, you're kind of this mix and match of like believing in myself, but but also thinking that, you know, oh fuck, well, is what they're saying about me true? You know, and ultimately when you grow up in life, when I was a teenager, I was probably very anxious and lacking confidence as a result of what I went through. And I think I went through a very important change in my life when I was a young man, because I got very into sports. I got very into being an athlete. And in that process, and I always say this to people, as weird as it might sound, but I have a character that's been forged under a bar. A character that's been forged under a bar. Like, lifting weights for me and going to the gym for me was always an expression of something that maybe I had locked away, because when people were called, you know, oh, you're a fat cunt, or you're this, or you're that, maybe I believed them to a certain extent. And when I was 18, 19, 20, and as I got really into powerlifting and I got good at it in a short amount of time, in that process of developing my strength and coming back every 2 or 3 months and getting better and better and better at something, and I suppose achieving, you know, mastery in something for once in my life, that changed my opinion of myself. It really did. It changed my opinion of myself, where, you know, every time I remember I went to do my first competition, and then I would go and do another competition 3 or 4 months later. And I remember the first time that I squatted 250 kilos in a competition. And I remember finishing, and it was like 2 or 3 years ago, I thought that was impossible. You know, I really did. I thought that was an impossible feat for me to do. My best always was like 200 kilos. And I thought that was strong. You know, I thought I was really strong to do that. And to be able to go into a competition and do 250 and feel so confident in what I was doing, it changed how I thought about things. It changed how I thought about myself. And it built this esteem and this belief that I can do things if I want to. You know, if I set my mind to something, I can get it done. And the only thing that holds me back is me and my own effort. And that is a very, very, very big lesson. And I think based on that journey, that served as my foundation to be able to push myself and fucking, you know, start something like Chef Fit. Or when I started off in my career in fitness, I went from the service industry, and then I did a complete 180, and then I went into the fitness industry, you know, and within a year of doing a course, or within 6 months of doing a course, I was teaching that very same course. Now, I would not have been able to do that if I hadn't had a background as an athlete, and, you know, gone through a process of overcoming extreme adversity to get good at something. Like, it's a really important point. Overcoming something difficult and getting good at it. There's something that happens there where, you know, you flick a switch. And I know for me, mentally, I flicked a switch, and, you know, obviously 4 or 5 years into the industry, being able to open up something like Chef Fit and lead chefs into living a better life. Ultimately, none of that would have happened if I hadn't have gone through something to improve my self-esteem and my belief in myself. You know, if I had just believed what bullies told me or dickheads told me in school, that you're fucking this and you're that, and, you know, I was always the shy guy who never got the girl. Like, if I had just had that opinion of myself, other people's opinion of me, and believe that my entire life, God knows where the fuck I would end up. And I know for men especially, this is really, really important, because a lot of men don't undo that process. You know, we all go through it. We've all been through shit. Some of us get far worse cards dealt to us than others. But when we fail to do something that proves it to ourselves, what we're actually worth, your headspace can get very, very negative. And I suppose, Peter, I'll throw it over to you as well, because you've got an interesting story on this, and you've got an interesting side on this. You know, like, obviously
100%.
we call Peter the GOAT, and he calls himself the GOAT within Chef It. You know, and there's a reason for that. You know, GOAT means greatest of all time, and that's an identity that Peter has that's allowed him to achieve massive things.
Very, very, very similar to yourself, where I was the youngest, not the youngest in the family, but the youngest of 3 brothers. My sisters are younger than me. And I was bullied almost every single day up until the last day of primary school. So my 2 brothers went to a school called Clogger Road. And then when my brother went in there, they said, right, we're shutting down in like 4 years. So no, we're not taking new people. So I was going to a different school. And I grew up in Drimnagh, right next door to Crumlin. And in the 80s, early 90s, it was a rough spot. And the school that I was put into then was all just crumbling. And I literally got this shit kicked down me 3, maybe 4 times a week. As soon as the day ended, I'd either hang back or try and get out ahead of everybody else, because I had to go miles away a different way. I couldn't get the bus home because there was always going to be about 10, 12 lads waiting outside. Literally, that was their crack. They were hunting. They just fired me, kicked the crap out of me, went away having a great laugh. That happened for about 5 years. And it was, in my own head, it's even now, it's like it was every day. It was an everyday thing, but I think I did get battered almost every single day from 2nd class through to 6th class. Tell the teachers, they're like, stop causing trouble, you know, don't be telling tales on your friends, that sort of stuff, you know. And my parents, too busy, like they'd been up a couple of times, and the teachers were like, yeah, we'll keep an eye on it. The school didn't do anything for it, you know. And then when I went from primary school into secondary school, I changed to a different school. So I went to Sing Street School in town in the inner city. And when I went in there, I made a very, very conscious decision not to be the same person that I was when I left primary school. And I made a conscious effort to go, and I wanted to play on the football team. I wanted to play the GA team. I wanted to play the hurling. I was brutal at hurling, didn't get nowhere on that. I wanted to play chess. I wanted to almost get in with every crowd that I could. And there was people from Crumlin there. There was people from Drimnagh, there was people from Tallaght, and the rest were all from in town. And when I went in there, it started off kind of like trying to be Mr. Popular, or like, you know, get on with everybody. But that started off with me competing in everything that I could do when it came to sports and when it came to intellectual challenges within the school as well. And over the space of them 5 years in secondary school, I had changed into somebody completely different. There was nothing quiet about me. There still isn't anything quiet about me now. But when I went out of that, that's where the goat came from, was from when I was competing in one-on-one things. It was mostly chess where I started saying the goat, because you're kind of like intimidating people, like for the crack, playing chess of all things, you know. But when make
a move, motherfucker.
You beat the goat. You don't call me the goat because I smell like cheese. But when I was in primary school, I did have very low self-esteem, and I didn't flick a switch on the self-esteem because I wasn't actually that person that I started to be when I was in secondary school. I put it on to get where I was. And then I remember you were saying to me when I had a little breakthrough at the summit, where we were talking about masks, and I had that mask, and you said that I had used that mask and turned it into an armor and steeled myself going forward. And I don't suffer from low self-esteem now. I haven't in an awful long time, and I was very surprised to find out that it was almost every single chef was suffering from low self-esteem, whereas I thought what was holding everyone back was the stress of the job, the pressure of the job, the drink, the drugs, all of that. When the underlying thing was, before they had all that, they were already susceptible to being stressed, depressed, anxious, addicted to alcohol, addicted to drugs, because of other things that had already shaped them growing up.
Okay.
Which turned out to be a lot of people saying, they didn't know their self-worth.
Yeah, absolutely, 110%.
You know, they didn't know their self-worth, and then they grow up and they get into relationships and they work jobs for years, and they get married, and they've been married for 8 years, and their wife doesn't know that they suffer from low self-esteem.
Big time. And it's funny, like, because I think we're both lucky in a way where, yeah, sure, you go through some shit, but, you know, we've come out the other end of it. And I wouldn't consider myself someone, even though I potentially was my whole life very self-conscious, you know, and now it's like I do something where I put myself out there on a daily basis through videos, through posts, through fucking writing, through all sorts of shit, through coaching. That part of me is almost, not that it's far from fucking perfect, but, you know, that part of me doesn't really exist anymore. You know, I'm very sure of myself and I've proven that. And, you know, some people haven't gone through that process. And the reason that that's a problem, as Peter was saying, is you end up in relationship years later and, you know, this thing goes unchecked, or, you know, you end up in a job years later and it goes unchecked, and it can creep around and it'll show its face at certain times. And like some of the things that I wrote down before the show as notes and, you know, diving into it, like the things that low self-esteem will result in, right? Your how you value yourself, how you treat yourself, you know, what you think of yourself and how you think others perceive you. You know, that's what self-worth is. A lot of the big thing is mental. You know, the big thing is mental. Like there's a feeling of worthlessness when you're going through this and you have a tough time and, you know, you don't place any value on yourself. You feel worthless. And that worthlessness will then lead to things like massive amounts of anxiety. Social situations will cause you big, big problems because you're so self-conscious of yourself. Like you could be talking to a fucking stranger and you could have a fucking meltdown talking to the stranger because you're like, shit, what do they think of me? Am I saying the right thing? You're overthinking. You're worrying, you're stressing, because that's something you've been programmed to do since day fucking one. And if it's not gone, and this is something that I still struggle with in social situations. People, Cameron's a fucking real, you know, he's an extrovert, he's very social, you know, he gets on well with people, he's a good speaker. It's like I'd still feel weird if I had to walk into like a dinner party and to speak to strangers the first time. I'd still be shitting myself before that, you know, because that doesn't necessarily really leave you. There's a degree of anxiety that comes with it that is mounted over time. The other thing is depression. Like you can end up in a very, very I suppose a powerless place when you don't believe in yourself, you know, when things are going wrong in your life. And because you have this low self-esteem, the situation will get worse. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, why does this always happen to me? You know, my life is fucking shit, this and that. And it can get very, very negative. And ultimately, a lot of the depression issues we see within the industry are coming from a place where someone doesn't actually have any belief in themselves and they're lost and they're fucked, you know, and that's one thing that really happens off the back of low self-esteem. The other things are going to be emotional. So like to tie into that, emotional or just that belief in yourself will then have a knock-on effect in the kitchen. So you could be a great chef. Like you could be someone who's highly skilled because of the years that you put into your craft. However, when it comes to leading others or being able to do something within your career, you're being held back. You know, for the amount of conversations I've had with chefs who are like, man, like I've been in the industry for a couple of years, but now I've had to step up into a head chef role and I'm absolutely shitting myself. Like I'm terrified. And the reason that they're terrified is because they don't believe in their own leadership. They would say something in the kitchen and it'll fall on deaf ears, and they don't believe that anyone sees them as a leader. You know, and that's low self-esteem in action. That's a lack of belief in yourself in action, because you haven't proven it to yourself yet, although you feel so super self-conscious about other people perceiving you in that way as well. That's another thing, you know, and in your career, that will hold you back and it'll stop you. And I suppose the whole idea of this episode is diving into why it's holding you back and what you can do to fix it. You know, so from an emotional standpoint and your belief in yourself, like that's one thing that will cause it. And then the other thing is physical. You know, the chef lifestyle, it's a bit of a fucking, it's like the perfect storm. It's the recipe for disaster sometimes, you know, and it's not all doom and gloom, but like this is the reality of it. From a physical standpoint, when you're stuck in that chef trap of, you know, yourself, the long hours, the stress and the pressure, which then leads to drug/alcohol use, you know what I mean? Shit food, not sleeping, not exercising, just giving everything work, you know, everything in work is prioritized and you're never prioritized. So on top of having low self-esteem, you can physically get to a space where you're looking in the mirror and you're like, what the fuck is going on here? You know, whether that be massively underweight or massively overweight, but it's being very out of shape and not comfortable in your own skin. So when you can combine that physical place of not feeling good about yourself, like not actually, like for anyone, even if you do have high self-esteem, if I was fucking obese, I'd be looking in the mirror going, fuck me, man, like shit. You know, how the fuck would that affect me mentally? So when you really don't believe in yourself and you have low self-esteem, and then you're actually getting a physical picture to prove what you think of yourself, like that's a tough situation to be in. And that, you know, just blurting it out, like your sex life, your relationships are a problem. Now, you're either alone or the relationship you're in is going to be in jeopardy. And for anyone that doesn't think it's a big thing, you know, sex life is important. Like if you're not having sex on a regular basis within a relationship, like that's an issue and that needs to be fixed. And I've talked to chefs who've gone, you know, I talked to someone recently and I was like, I'm in a relationship. We've been together for a year. We haven't had sex in 4 months. And I'm like, fuck, man, like what's going on? You know, what's going on? It's like, I just don't have the confidence to initiate. So it's just gone on under the radar, nothing being said. Again, all coming back to a place of what you think of yourself. Like you actually don't think of yourself as, you know, well, like they wouldn't want to have sex with me. So like, why even bother? You know, like that's the mindset. And it's a tough fucking place to be. And ultimately this then ties into what a chef's biggest fear is, right? A biggest fear. For a lot of chefs, from what I saw, is the fear of failure or the fear of being alone. Two big fears, okay? You know, the kind of things that keep you up at night. The fear of failure. So success means different things for different people. And this is another thing that I've determined. Success means different things to different people. For some people, a successful life is where they have more time for the things that are important. So Peter's life would be a very good example of that right now, where he's made efforts to change his structure and work to allow him more time with his family, more time for himself, okay? Very, very different life to one he would have had 5 years ago. Some chefs...
night and day.
Yeah, totally. Some chefs, it's freedom, it's creative freedom, you know, and I always point to my brother Keelan, who's, you know, he's always been... Keelan's always been very focused on what he's done and he's never let anything encroach on that. And luckily he doesn't have any kids and he's in a relationship, but he doesn't have any kids and he's been purely head down towards his own restaurant. That's worked out for him. Some chefs, it's financial where they'll get to a point, I don't know, they're cooking at a top level or they're at an exec level or whatever and they can kind of step back and they can make more money regardless, right? Doesn't matter what your end goal is. The fear is that you won't achieve that thing. The fear is that you won't achieve that thing. And that fear stems from, number one, being stuck in the rut right now. So you don't believe in yourself. So you don't honestly think you have the ability. You don't think you have the ability to achieve that thing. And because you're so lost within your lifestyle and where you're at, like you don't know if you can see it through to another fucking month or two, let alone, you know, the 5, 10, 15 years that it might take to build that life that you're talking about. So ultimately, when you can combine the low self-esteem affecting your headspace, affecting your physical relationships, affecting your ability to lead others, you know, that ultimately determines whether you're going to achieve your life goals or not. And that's a very serious situation. And I think the other thing is being alone. You know, you're talking about, you know, being in a relationship. And I know a couple of chefs are like, fuck man, like I honestly feel incapable right now of being in a relationship with someone. Like I'm terrified that 10 years from now, that's still going to be the same fucking situation. So what I want you to understand, guys, is that that's what low self-esteem results in. And that's the impact that it'll have down the road. And the key question is like, what do you do to fix these things? Because we've talked enough about the problem. It's like, what do you do to fix these things? I said at the start of the episode that, you know, within Chef Fit, that this is a process that's happened that I maybe wasn't 100% aware of at the time. But there was a process where the chefs went through the same way me and Peter went through when we were younger, of through overcoming adversity, you prove something to yourself. And you prove that you are, you know, you are worth something. You do believe in yourself. And this is all down to a couple of things. Number one, everything is perception. Perception is reality. Okay? So let's dive into this for a second. Perception, what does that mean? Perception means, what do I perceive to be true? Every person has a different perception. Like me and Peter could look at a situation and he could have an opinion and I can have an opinion. What determines the difference in opinion is our perception of things. Okay? Perception is based on belief. So for a lot of people with low self-esteem, you will always perceive yourself to be wrong. So you'll say sorry for no fucking reason. You'll always perceive yourself to be wrong. You'll always perceive things to be bad, and you'll worry about the worst case scenario all the time. You know, and you'll have all these fucking worries. And those worries are, you know, you're perceiving things in that way because of what you believe. And specifically, it's what you believe about yourself. So think about it. If you've been bullied as a child and, you know, your parents never told you were good enough and they always told you were fucking this and that and you're, you know, and honestly, I've seen parents say this, you know, very harsh with their kids and not, you know, not understanding that what you're saying is actually having a fucking impact on that person's, you know, character. But depending on what people have said to you throughout your life and what your self-esteem is, you know, and maybe you haven't gone through the process of fixing it or changing it, you can believe yourself to be worthless. You can believe yourself to not be good enough to do something, or I need more of this, or I need more of that before I can go and do these things. You don't actually have that inner belief that you can go and do things. You know, an extreme example would be someone like, of someone with extremely high self-esteem would be like someone like Conor McGregor. You know what I mean? It's like to think about what is actually possible when you have belief. You know, he perceived himself as this champion, this world beater, best of all time, you know, greatest fighter of all time. No one can fucking touch him because he had this insane, you know, just like
belief and work ethic.
Yeah, invulnerable belief in himself that he was capable of achieving something incredible, like being a UFC champion and being the greatest of all time. Whereas I think a lot of Irish people naturally were programmed to kind of put ourselves down, you know what I mean, and be silent sufferers and not, you know, not believe that you're capable of that. And before he was in the UFC, not one fucking Irish person was thinking that they'd be an Irish UFC champion. I remember when he was coming up going like, this is actually mental. Like I'm in disbelief that an Irish person is actually doing this. And that's how powerful it was at the time, that it all stems from belief in himself. If he had to just believe what people told him, maybe he wouldn't have achieved it. He wouldn't, like simply, he would not have achieved that. Because again, your perception, he perceived himself as the champion because he had belief systems. He believed himself to be the champion. He visualized what he wanted to be in his life. He knew what he wanted to be in his life. So therefore, through his thought process, his beliefs, he was able to manifest that. Because think about it. Perception is determined by beliefs, but that also determines what action you take, you know? If you believe you're worthless and it's not worth doing, then you're not going to do fuck all. But if you believe you are worth it and this thing is worth doing, you're going to take that action. So key question here is understanding that. It's like, how do you change what you perceive to be true? Well, you have to change what you believe. And how do you change what you believe? Well, you have to achieve results, you know? And this is the whole thing within ChefFit. And this is what we try and do. Like if you think about the process that you went through, Peter, even though you had high self-esteem, or maybe looking at other examples within the group. So like I would say Liam Kiernan would be a fantastic example of that. You know, Gordo would be an example of that. Some of the guys who've been in it and they've been so fucking consistent within the group, and you see the change.
You have to test yourself all the time.
Yeah.
Especially from a low self-esteem. That's the best advice that I could give to anybody. Yeah. Just to test yourself. Like compete against yourself and step out of the comfort zone and surprise yourself with what you can do.
Totally.
You go, oh Jesus. You know what I mean? That's a massive confidence booster when you do something.
And here's the thing, bumper sticker. Like the thing that you're looking to find is going to be found in the place that you do not want to look. Yeah. So the thing that you're looking to find, what is that? Well, the thing you're looking to find is your self-esteem. You're looking to find and spark that belief in yourself that you can actually do it. And you want to feel that I am a good person. I can do this. I'm worth something. How you do that is, unfortunately, you have to do it in adversity. Like nothing is handed to you on a fucking plate. And for every chef that I talk to, I tell them it's very simple, but it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. So when I say it's simple, it's black and white. You have to do the work. You have to take responsibility. Like here's the ChefFit path. You're going to move every day. You're going to fucking batch cook, eat your 3 meals a day. You're going to take photos of everything that you eat. You're going to write down a plan for every day and organize your time. You're going to have all of this based around trying to achieve a specific goal. 30 days, 90 days, 6 months, you know, you have a destination that you're trying to get to. And then you do that within an environment where you're surrounded by other chefs who are doing the same thing as you. You're seeing what they're doing. You're seeing their results. That's motivating you. They're also supporting you. They're driving you forward. And then there's a competitive nature to the environment where we're all pushing to get to the next level, hit the next target. What happens in that is that you achieve things, okay? So when you achieve things, ultimately you bolster your belief system. You change your belief system and it was the same thing for me. Like when I first went into a competition and I was able to squat 250 kilos, I stepped away from the bar going, I could break a record. You know, I could be the first person to break I think the record was 260, you know, and I was a junior at the time. That means under 23. So it's like, I could be the first person in Irish history to do that. You know, and that belief of that spark, and that put me on a road to really fucking pushing, because there was an instant feeling of, oh, Jesus, I can, you know, before I was just, I was happy to compete and do something. As soon as that happened, I was like, okay, like, let's do this. Like, I can actually go and do this. And then how intensely I treated my training after that, you know, was mental. So the same thing happens in chefing. When chefs come in and they lose 15, 20, sometimes even 30 to 40 kilos, yeah, and they're able to go from drinking on a daily basis, doing drugs on a regular basis, eating shit, and not going, days without eating proper meals, and then binge eating and, you know, smoking cigarettes. Like, to go from that to moving every day, I'm exercising, I'm leveling up on the chef's path. Boom. Cameron just said I've reached level 2. Now I'm on the leaderboard. I've gotten Trainerized, the app where we do our training programs. Like, that's telling me I've gotten 10 personal bests this week. I've improved on this. I've got my before photos, and now I'm looking at my after photos and I look like a different person. I've got people telling me that my face looks different. I wasn't able to run before I started Chef It. Now I'm doing 5Ks in this amount of time. It's like, and then I'm surrounded by other chefs. Normally when I'm in work, the chefs are really negative, but when I'm in Chef It, the tribe, everyone's super positive and they're all doing the same thing as me. There's something about being in that starts to, and when you're doing it, you're doing the work, you're achieving results. Every time you achieve a result, you're just proving it to yourself. You're just popping it. Like David Goggins says, he talks about a confidence jar. Yeah. Being able to take all the wins that you've had in your life and keep them in a jar in your mind to be able to dip into and remind yourself. It's like, fuck, no, you've done this. You can actually go and do that. Within Chef It, it's like taking all these little things, putting all these wins into a jar. And that's ultimately what's forming your belief, what's forming your self-esteem. What do you actually think to be true here? And I always say to chefs that the shorter that you do it, the less guarantee you're going to have. The longer that you're here, the more guarantee that you have. And what I mean by that is, you know, it's probably going to take you 6 to 12 months, depending on your experience level, to get to a point where you've passed, you know, the point of no return, where you're not going back to square one. You could probably do 2 or 3 months intensely and go back to square one feasibly if you're not controlling yourself, if you're, you know, just fucking red pilling it and not taking any responsibility, and you just go straight back into your old ways. But something happens over a long period of time where you've achieved enough results, where you've proven it to yourself enough times, and you've ingrained the habits that you're just like, well, this is just how I live my life now. I live a disciplined life. I'm focused on my goals. I'm fucking active on my days off and in any of my time off. And I'm pretty much an involved, better version of myself, you know, and obviously looking different physically, having fitness, much better health, being much stronger. That's all fantastic on the surface of things, but it's what's happening mentally that's important there. You're bolstering confidence, you're bolstering self-esteem, and this is what everyone misses. You're, you know, oh, I want to feel healthier, I want to lose 2 kg. It's like, they're shit goals, bro. They're shit goals. For scrap that shit. You know, your goal should be specific, but also trying to tie an emotion to it. You know, like, what do you lose the 2 kilos? Like, what happens then? Why is that important to you? You know, why is that important? And if you can correlate these things in your mind and actually think about it, I always get chefs to write down the facts before they start chefing. Like, write down the facts. What's happening in your body right now? How do you ultimately feel about your body? It's like, fuck, man, like, I feel absolutely terrible about my body. How do you feel mentally? Well, I'm extremely stressed. How do you feel in your relationships? Well, like, the relationship is not going well. We haven't had sex in a long time. How do you feel in your career? I don't back myself in the kitchen. You know, when you get things like, well, I actually have no belief in myself. I have no confidence in myself. I believe all the negativity that people tell me about me. and you know, my life is shit as a result of that. The goal is to fix that. You know what I mean? And like the weight loss and all of that shit, they're important to put down because they tell you that you're moving in the right direction, but they're not necessarily the be all and end all. 2 kilos isn't your problem. 2 kilos is the byproduct. So if we change, you know, what's happening internally, your programming, that's the key. And the way that you do that is that you apply yourself for a long amount of time, right? Good amount of time. And you focus on being disciplined. You focus on being around people who support you, who are, you know, positive influences on you. And ultimately, you take those wins that you have and you pop them in the confidence jar. And all of a sudden, after fucking 6 to 12 months, now you've got this jar full of shit that you're like, actually, this is me. I believe in myself. You know, I am the shit. And me and Peter have seen it. You know, I really can't state, like, you know, Liam Kiernan, he's such a good example. And I hope he doesn't mind me talking about this. When I first spoke to Liam on the phone, the guy didn't know whether he was coming or going. You know, he honestly didn't. He wasn't sure of himself. He was totally burnt out. He's like, man, I don't know. I suppose I'll give it a shot. I'm not sure. Like, he wouldn't back himself. And he committed himself. Something happened.
100%.
Something clicked in Liam. I don't think I ever saw someone attack Sheffield the way he attacked it. But he just fucking went at it, you know, and he didn't stop, and he never has stopped. Never has stopped in fucking nearly 2 years. Never stopped, which is mad. And in that process, he completely transformed everything about himself physically, but it's more mental. You could see it in his face when he speaks. He knows what he's doing. He jumps on videos, and even though he doesn't like doing videos, you know, he underestimates. I love his videos because he's very honest and straight up, and he means what he's saying. You know, and it's a new version.
He has a message in every video, and now he looks right at you.
Yeah.
You know, when he's talking, he said it, and then he goes like this, and he leans in, and he can see into people.
Yeah.
And he knows how important his videos are. He knows how important they are.
Yeah. That is the process. He has literally changed who he is, you know, through that discipline. That's mad. That's mental to think that he's been able to do that. But that's the truth of what happens. That's what happens. So I suppose taking this thing into the harbor, like, understand that your self-worth will have an impact on the outcome of your life. And if you don't deem yourself to be of worth, it's essential that you start doing something now to start changing that. And the biggest thing I can tell you right now is that you need to change your beliefs about yourself, okay, how you're perceiving things. And how you do that, in my opinion, and our path, is you do that through changing your lifestyle, changing yourself physically. And there's somewhere in that transformation that you start thinking differently about yourself. And if you start thinking differently about yourself, ultimately the outcome of your life is going to be much, much different. And really, you're just going to be a happier fucking person. You'll be a happier person, you know? That's why health is so focused. People look at me and they think it's just about fitness, or think Chef Fit's just about fitness, or why you moving every day, why you doing all these things. Because it's like, I'm not here to make you fit. I'm not here to fucking get you to lose the gut. You know, I'm here to build a fucking new belief system in yourself. I'm here to give you a new way of life. I'm here to fucking overhaul everything. All that physical stuff I just talked about, that's part of the process, but that's not the fucking be all and end all. The aim of the game is to get you to a point where you're healthy, you're happy, and you're in a place where life is going your way. And I think the way to do that is by disciplining yourself. Like, the way you do that is by changing your ways, changing bad habits, you know, and taking control of your life. And the ultimate way of taking control of your life is taking control of your health first and foremost, you know, and that's the message for today.
It's all one big happy bag. Like, when you decide to make that change, and it is a lifestyle change, and it does begin with, as you're saying, move every day and start eating properly. But all of this it starts off like that, but it goes straight through into the self-esteem, your self-worth, and your own confidence. And once that starts to click in with the rest of it, like myself, I got addicted to the actual process, and I got my kicks elsewhere.
Totally.
And also, I got loads of new kicks.
Yeah.
I don't even have enough time to do half the things that I enjoy now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, big time. And That's a really important part of it. You've learned a lot about yourself, and you've developed things in your life that that make you happy, that make you fulfilled, that give you focus, 110%, bro. So yeah, guys, that is today's topic, and a very, very important one. And I hope you've learned something here and you've taken something away from us, because I know it's a topic that people don't necessarily
Get out
talk
and
about.
test yourself.
Yeah, big time.
Get out and compete. And when I say compete, I don't mean go and enter into a competition or something like that. I mean compete.
Yeah.
Compete against yourself. Compete against your low self-esteem.
Mm.
And what I did was fake it till you make it. That was the way it worked for me. Well, I was 12 years old at the time.
Yeah.
But I know now that if I wanted to compete against myself, then it is a screaming match that goes on. And when you win, you have a win, and that's another one in the jar.
Totally. Saying
to get that through testing yourself.
Big time. And I probably didn't mention, the thing for me that I've been doing recently is jiu-jitsu. And again, the job is never done. You can improve, but it's never done. And there was something for me in jiu-jitsu where I got myself comfortable with the gym and doing stuff there that I wasn't getting that same boost that I was before. So I haven't been competing in powerlifting due to injuries and, different focuses and whatnot. And I've kind of lost that edge to myself where I was constantly in this process of proving it. I remember going back to jiu-jitsu a couple of weeks ago in Australia. Like, I was doing it in Ireland. Obviously, I had an injury setback, and now I've started back over here. And there was something really, really important, and it was a process I hadn't been through in a long time. And we'll finish on this, is that it was a new environment, it was a new place, and everyone was very high level. And I was absolutely shitting myself going in because I'm a white belt. I was just terrified. New people, Aussies, how are they going to see me? How are they going to perceive me? Am I going to make a fucking fool of myself? Am I going to make a bollocks of this? I don't want to be paired with someone who's a higher level because I'm going to ruin the session for them. Like, those are the thoughts that are going through my head. Which tells you that the job is not done. Even though I believe in myself, I still have all those same fucking insecurities and anxieties. And every time I would show up, and I remember walking down, it's a 15-20 minute walk to the gym or the jiu-jitsu school. I remember walking down and just thinking, fuck, man, I really don't want to do this, really don't want to do this, really don't want to do this. And before, I was all excited the weeks before because I didn't have that immediate anticipation that I actually had to go and fucking do the thing. You're thinking about all the good things, but you're not actually thinking about the reality of having to show up for the first time. And I remember showing up for the first time. We went through the class, and I walked out of that class feeling like I'd climbed a mountain, because I put the mountain in my mind, of like, fuck's sake, man, like, I really don't want to do this. But there's something in that process of going and doing something that you should do, but you really don't want to. And going and doing that and walking out, and even though, I try to give a good account to myself, and I got fucking strangled, and I've been going consistently for a couple of weeks, every time I walk out, it's just another thing in the jar. You know what I mean? And I'm learning something, and it's a skill that I haven't developed. So in the process of developing that skill and showing up to new people and, getting better and better and better, again, the self-esteem, the self-confidence. Every time I might walk in there with my head down, I walk out of there with my chest proud, and that's a very important process. You need to be tested. You need to overcome that adversity, because that's what life is. That's what it's about. It's what we've been through. It's what we've been conditioned to do since we were fucking, hunter-gatherers. It's like there's something in the process of, and I say this, it's not exclusive to men, but like, let's say you're hunting and gathering, for the tribe, and you literally have to go and test yourself in order to survive. Well, in modern day sense, we might not have to do that to survive, but we have to test ourselves and overcome in order to live a happy, fulfilled life, and that's the truth. So don't expect life to be easy and handed to you on a plate. The truth is, we have to work hard for what we want. But in that process, that's what it's about. So take that in mind, guys, please. And I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Give us a thumbs up on the video if you did enjoy it. If you're watching it on YouTube, 5-star review on iTunes, and a review on, or a comment on Podbean, wherever you're listening to this. Please support the podcast as best you can. Share it on social media platforms. Post it in your story on Instagram. Do something to support, because the more chefs that hear this, obviously, the more impact that it has. So if you are listening to this and you are a chef, please share it with your chef friends if you think they'd be interested. Okay. I've been Cameron. That lad is Peter. We've been the Chef Live podcast. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. Much love. Petey, catch you later, bro. Okay.
Look.
Peace.